Okay, so you want to buy a rental house. This one's not like your other little empire fantasies. No vault under the Alps, no velvet rope, no superstar DJ, just a house. A tenant. A check that shows up every month while you're asleep. Passive income. The internet keeps whispering, over and over, until you believe it. Here's the part the whispering leaves out. Buy a rental today, stare only at that monthly check, and you'll usually find it's small. Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes, and this genuinely happens, you pay money every month to own the thing. Yet somehow, buying rental houses has minted more everyday millionaires than almost any other move an ordinary person can make. Both facts, sitting in the same room, refusing to look at each other. The distance between them is what nobody bothers to explain, and it's the entire point. Because the real money in a rental house does not live in the rent, not even close. So let's go shopping. Cheap end of the catalog first. The fixer-upper in some quiet town nobody's heard of. 150 grand for a little place in the Midwest that wants a coat of paint and a water heater it can be proud of. Why people love these? They're cheap enough that the rent actually clears the bills and leaves crumbs behind. The problem hiding underneath is that cheap houses tend to sit in cheap places, and cheap places don't appreciate, they crawl. So you pocket a small check and watch the value barely move for a decade. Fine if the check is all you're after. Most people, it turns out, want the check and the growth, and this tier hands you only one. Move up a shelf. Now it's the ordinary suburban house. 3, maybe 400,000, decent schools, a street where kids ride bikes. Rent here just about covers the costs, no more. But the house itself climbs over the years, slow and steady. Then the top shelf, the one that eats beginners alive, the pretty house in the glamorous coastal city. Prestige, ocean air, and a monthly bill that reaches into your own pocket and pulls out thousands every single month purely on faith that the price keeps rising. See the pattern yet? Cheaper house, fatter check, flatter growth. Fancier house, no check, and a giant bet on tomorrow. So how do you actually get one? Standard way, nothing clever. Find the house, put some money down, let the bank cover the rest. And right here is the single idea that makes this whole video worth your time. So do not drift off, because this is the engine humming under everything else. Buy a $300,000 house and you don't need $300,000. Put down 60, 20%. The bank fronts the other 240. But look what you own now, the whole house, every brick of it. That house drifts up 5% this year, that's $15,000, and all 15 are yours on a bet of only 60. 5% growth on the house just became 25% growth on your money. That trick has a name. It's called leverage, and it's basically the whole reason regular people build wealth through property instead of stocks. You're steering a big, expensive thing with a small pile of your own cash, and you keep every dollar the big thing earns. Nowhere else can a normal person borrow this much, this cheaply, to own something this large. Then the bargain aisle. Somebody desperate. A divorce, a job 3 states away, a family that missed one too many payments. Real discounts live here. And so does the oldest trap in the book, because the very cheapest houses are usually cheap for a reason you can't see from the driveway. A foundation with a crack running through it. A roof pretending to be fine. Pipes older than your parents. That wasn't a deal you found. It was a problem someone else finally escaped, and now it's got a lockbox on the door with your name on it. One more thing, and this one's recent, and it matters. There used to be a clean little test landlords swore by. The 1% rule. Rent should be at least 1% of the price, monthly. $200,000 house, $2,000 a month, done. Trouble is, that math is basically dead across most of the country now. Prices ran off, and borrowing for a rental costs somewhere near 8% these days, quite a bit steeper than the loan on the home you actually live in. Which means, in plenty of markets, there is no ordinary house where the rent covers the freight, full stop. The easy deals got picked clean years ago. That's exactly why so much of this now rides on the slow, quiet prizes instead of the check. Your first bill. This is where the passive income dream gets a bucket of cold water. New landlords all make the identical mistake. They line rent up next to the mortgage, see rents bigger, and call the gap profit. Wrong. A house costs so much more than its mortgage. Property tax, every year, arriving whether you're ready or not. Insurance, repairs, and the repairs, because a house is a machine built from 100 things that break, and they break on their own schedule, which is always the worst possible one. The roof, the furnace, the water heater that dies in February, the dishwasher nobody thinks about until it floods the kitchen. Then vacancy, those hollow months between tenants when the rent stops cold but the mortgage keeps right on knocking. And if you'd rather not personally field a phone call about an overflowing toilet at 2 in the morning, a property manager will happily take 8 or 10% to field it for you. Old landlords have a grim little saying about all this. Over time, roughly half your rent gets devoured by everything that isn't the mortgage. Half of it, gone. Rule number 1 then, and write it on your hand. Rent is not profit. Rent is the number every other cost gets carved out of. And the carving always goes deeper than you guessed. Fine. So where does the actual money come from? Here's the flip that rearranges the whole picture. If the check is tiny or zero, how does anyone get rich? Because a rental doesn't pay you once. It pays you 4 separate ways at the same time, and the rent is only one of the 4. Treat the check as the cover charge, the thing that just gets you in the door. The good stuff is happening quietly behind it. Start with appreciation, the house creeping upward in value year after year. And thanks to that leverage trick, you keep the growth on the entire house even though you only ever fronted a slice of it. Next, and this is my favorite one, the one almost nobody clocks. Your tenant is paying off your mortgage for you. Every month, a chunk of their rent goes to shrink your loan, which means, if you squint, they are slowly buying you a house, one payment at a time, and handing it over at the end. You barely feel it happen because it never lands in your bank account. It shows up as a debt getting smaller and your ownership getting bigger, silent in the background. 20, 30 years of that, and the loan is simply gone, paid off by other people, and you're standing there holding a valuable house, free and clear, that you bought decades ago with a modest down payment. And then the tax breaks, because governments, for reasons of their own, adore landlords and hand them ways to keep more of what comes in. 4 engines, then. The rent you can see, and 3 you mostly can't. Picture a fruit tree. The rent is a handful of apples you pick each month, small, right there in your hand, easy to count. But the tree is quietly getting taller and heavier and worth more every single season, and somebody else is out there watering it. The guy fixated on the apples never notices the whole tree turned into a fortune. Who's your real customer, though? Feels like the tenant. And sure, technically. But flip it. Your tenant isn't buying a place to live off you so much as buying you a house. Their money covers your bills and eats away at your loan, and at the finish line, they collect a box of memories, and you collect a paid-off asset. That isn't cruelty. It's just the trade both of you signed, and a decent landlord earns every bit of it by keeping the place genuinely nice to live in. Still, no confusion about who owns the walls when the music stops. The graveyard now. And pay attention to this one, because a house feels safe in a way a nightclub never does. And that exact feeling of safety is the thing that buries people. Biggest headstone in the yard, 2008. For years leading up to it, prices only ever went one direction, and the whole country quietly agreed that real estate couldn't lose. People bought with almost nothing down, betting everything on prices climbing forever, riding that gorgeous leverage we just admired. Then prices fell. And leverage, it turns out, has a nasty twin nobody introduces you to on the way up. It runs backward just as hard. 5% down, house drops 10, and you're not just poorer, you're underwater, owing the bank more than the house is worth on a good day. Millions ended up trapped like that, owing more than they could ever sell for, unable to make the payments, mailing the keys back to the bank. The lesson is blunt. The same leverage that builds fortunes going up will vaporize them coming down. And the folks who got erased were the ones who bet the whole farm on prices rising and left themselves not 1 inch of cushion. Second grave. Quieter. Way more common. This is the one that'll actually come for you. It's the landlord who knowingly bought a house that bleeds a little every month, whispering to himself that appreciation would cover the gap. Cash flow negative, they call it, and it's totally survivable, right up until it isn't. The furnace quits, $4,000. The tenant vanishes, and the place sits empty 90 days. A pipe lets go behind a wall. That tidy little monthly loss becomes a hemorrhage of bills. And because he never stashed a dime for exactly this moment, he's forced to sell at the worst possible time, usually for a loss. So here's the thing that gets people, and it isn't what they expect. In real estate, you rarely lose because the house was bad. You lose because you ran out of cash before the good years showed up. The survivors aren't the geniuses. They're the ones who kept enough in the bank to outlast the surprises. Third grave isn't sad. It's a warning shot about who's standing across the table from you. After '08, when half the country's houses were going for a song, enormous Wall Street outfits quietly scraped together billions and bought tens of thousands of regular homes, the precise kind you're out here shopping for, and flipped them all into rentals. One firm alone raised north of $1 billion to do it, meaning the cozy little mom-and-pop rental dream now has you bidding against companies with bottomless pockets and floors full of analysts. Doesn't mean you lose. It means the easy money's been hoovered up, and you'd better be genuinely sharp, not just optimistic with a spreadsheet. All right, the real math. You buy the $300,000 house, 60 down, and you rent it out. Good version first. Rent covers everything and drops $200 a month in your lap. $2,400 a year, which on its own sounds almost insulting, barely worth the headaches. But now stack the invisible stuff on top. House appreciates a calm 4%. That's $12,000 of value. Nearly all of it yours because of leverage. Tenant knocks another $5,000 off your loan without you lifting a finger. Toss in a few thousand in tax perks, add the whole pile up, and that dull little house didn't hand you $2,400. It quietly built you something closer to $20,000 in real wealth that year. Most of it in forms you never once saw hit your account. Run that for 20 years across a few houses, and you've just described, in slow motion, how ordinary people get quietly, seriously rich. Now the version a lot of first-timers actually get, especially right now. You bought somewhere decent, so the rent doesn't quite stretch over the costs, and you're feeding the thing $300 a month from your own wallet. Then year one hands you its little gift. Water heater plus a leaky roof, $6,000, poof. Tenant leaves, 2 months of silence. On paper, the year's a loss. You fed the house did not feed you. And that's the honest, unglamorous face of rental property in this market. High rates, and the early years turn into a slog where you're betting on patience, on the house rising and the loan shrinking while the monthly check gives you crumbs or nothing at all. None of this is financial advice, by the way. It's just the education nobody hands you up front, and the reason people bail is simple. They came for passive income and found a long, dull wait plus a cash cushion you'd better have before the surprises arrive. If any of this helped, subscribe and tell me in the comments the cheap house that pays you a little every month or the expensive one that pays you nothing now and might be worth a fortune later. Which one would you actually buy? I read every single reply. Coming up next in this series, the economics of owning an apartment building, where every trick you just learned gets bigger, weirder, and a whole lot more powerful. Because here's what you really bought. Not a paycheck, whatever the internet swore to you. This was never a paycheck. You bought a slow machine that quietly converts other people's rent, a little patience, and one modest down payment into a valuable thing you eventually own outright. The rent was never the prize. It was just barely enough to keep the lights on while the actual magic, the house climbing, the loan shrinking, a stranger paying it down month after month, happened off stage for years. Property didn't make regular people rich by paying them a lot every month. It made them rich by letting them own something huge with something small, and then asking one hard thing of them in return. Wait.